Now let's have a look the URL filtering function and also the data prevention. So in these slides, I'm going to share the URL filtering, the SSL proxy that we used to decrypt the HTTPS traffic and also file filtering functions. So URL filtering, we used the URL to filter the traffic or filter the access to the specific URL or the specific URL categories Or also we can do some keyword. Control. The URL filter including both URL category and also URL keyword. For the category, we support 64 predefined URL categories. And also you can create your customized URL. After the URL license is installed, the device will update for the URL database automatically as long as you enable the auto update. And also we can support the online query service for some unclassified URL. Here is the predefined URL category. We currently support 64 categories for URL, and the actions support both block and log. And the URL signature database is different comparing with those security service update. So URL database is url1.hostnet.com and url2.hostnet.com. It's used for in query service for some unclassified URL. How to configure for the URL? So you can add your user-defined URL category for both HTTP and HTTPS URL. If you want to filter the access or control the access to some specific HTTPS traffic website, you also need to enable the SSL inspection, which can help to detect for the encrypted URL page, which using HTTPS. And we can also use the keyword filter to filter any access to the URL that contains this keyword. After you have the URL filtering profile configured, you can turn it on in both policy and zone. And after the URL function enabled in policy or zone, and also you enabled for the log, the device will record all the URL access log, including the IP address, the destination IP, the users, and also the URL that visited. So this is the URL filtering. So we can use this to block the access to the specific URL or the URL categories. Next one is the SSL proxy. So SSL proxy functions is the one that we use to decrypt the HTTPS traffic. As you may know, currently more than 80 or even 90% of the traffic that transferred through the HTTPS, they are encrypted, and also all those famous or popular applications, they are also running with encrypted traffic. So we need to support this function to replace the certificate to replace the certificate of the web server and replace this server certificate to get the encrypted information and then send those SSL proxy certificate we generated from the firewall to the client's web server, web browser, sorry. So during this process, so the browser had Hailstone certificate. So we will act as the SSL client and send the request to the real server, to the real web server. And for the client side, we are the SSL server for the users. In this case, we are able to decrypt the SSL traffic, and then we are able to do some further analysis for the encrypted traffic. And this proxy is transparent. So for the web server, we will act as the real customer request. And for the customer side, we will act as the SSL server. And here's the HTTPS website certificate, okay, which contains the subject, which is the certificate user, and also the issuer for the certificate. So how to configure for the SSL proxy? First of all, you need to create for SSL proxy for profile, and add which website you want to proxy for. And then you enable the SSL proxy in the policy. You also need to export the PKI CA certificate from the firewall. You need to export the CA certificate, the firewall CA certificate, and then send to the users. The user need to install this firewall certificate into the web browser. After that, we are able to detect or decrypt the SSL traffic between the user and the web server. After that, we can also send this plain text traffic. We can also do some further analysis based on the plain text traffic by using the AV, IPS, those security functions. Next one will be the file filtering, the file security functions. We can support to check the file transferring through those protocols, HTTP for both GET and POST, and also FTP, SMTP, and POP3. And we support to identify those file types, okay, including the commonly used documentation files, the video files, etc., and also the zipped files. We support both block and log functions for the file filtering. Here is the configuration for the file filtering. As I mentioned, we support to filter the file based on the file's type, protocol, and also the file size. We can set the minimum file size that need to be filtered. After that, you need to enable these data security functions in policy. Okay, you need to enable these functions in policy. As long as there is any file that's sent through this matched policy, we will filter through this file, the file filter function, and then also record and also record the log. You are able to see which types of the files will transfer through which protocol. Some question for this chapter: URL filtering, predefined URL database, and user-defined URL. Which one has the higher matching priority? So user-defined URL has higher priority than the predefined. What are the two matching methods of the URL keyword? So URL keyword, we have two. One is the exact matching. Another is a regular expression. So that is two keyword matching. Where the created SSL proxy profile should be called in policy only. Which protocol can be supported by 5 filtering functions, as I mentioned before. So those are the supported file types, but not only this. You can find the whole list from the datasheet or from the user menu. So that is for the URL filtering and also for the data filtering.